The rain didn't fall that day. It assaulted. Lagos was under siege, and the Oshodi Underbridge had surrendered first. Water gushed through the gutters like it was late for an appointment, and traffic inched along as if reconsidering its life choices. Somewhere in the chaos, a black Bentley tried to look dignified, gliding slowly like a whale through a flooded street. Inside, Maxwell George, oil magnate, boardroom bruiser, and reluctant philanthropist, was trying to forget the board meeting he had just left. Numbers had been thrown, egos inflated, and someone declared the future was hydrogen. All very important. All utterly pointless now, because that's when he saw her. A woman. Small, soaked, barely standing. Her brown wrapper clung to her bones. Her hand shook as she extended it to a sea of indifferent pedestrians. Her voice barely rose above the rain. Please. I haven't eaten. People passed as if poverty were contagious. But Maxwell stopped breathing. For half a second, the world blurred. Not from rain, but from memory. He pressed the brake. The Bentley hissed. The driver looked up in the mirror, confused. Sir. But Maxwell was already out. Into the rain. Into the past. She was thinner than memory allowed. Her gray hair was matted, her eyes clouded with time and hunger. She looked up, squinting. Do I know you? He swallowed. Madam Amaka. It's me, Maxwell. The name meant nothing at first. Then, a tremble. Her knees gave way. He caught her, just as she had once caught him. 20 years earlier, Maxwell had been a boy with too much house and too little supervision. The pool had rules. Naturally, he broke them. One cartoon character jumps into water to save a dog, and 7-year-old Maxwell decided he could do the same. Except he couldn't swim. He remembered the feeling, cold, thick, absolute. The water had grabbed him, pulled him under, and showed no intention of giving him back. But she did. Amaka, the nanny with a stern voice and soft hands, had jumped in fully clothed, yelling his name through water. She hauled him up, dragged him out, wrapped him in a towel, and drove him to the hospital. No questions asked. No permission sought. She saved his life. And days later, she was gone. A closed-door conversation. Accusations of negligence. A decision made in hushed tones. He was sent abroad. She vanished. He never saw her again. Until now. In the Bentley, she trembled like paper in the wind. Maxwell wrapped his jacket around her. Her voice cracked. I walked all day. My sons, Jerry and Jacob, they... She couldn't finish. He pressed the console. Called Dr. Hassan. A moment later, Maxwell, I'm bringing someone. Emergency. Elderly. Starving. Cold. It's urgent. Understood, came the reply. They sped through the flooded streets, windshield wipers thrashing in rhythm with Maxwell's heart. At the hospital, nurses moved fast. IVs, warm blankets, vitals, oxygen. Maxwell stood beside her bed, dripping onto the tiles. She's the reason I'm alive, he said. Do whatever it takes. Dr. Hassan nodded. We'll stabilize her. But malnutrition, exposure, she's fragile. She's stronger than you think, Maxwell muttered. Hours passed. Rain softened to mist. Maxwell sat beside her bed, his phone forgotten, his status irrelevant. Her eyes opened. You've grown, she whispered. You look like your father. You saved me, he said. And I never thanked you. You were just a boy, she smiled faintly. Small. Stubborn. I couldn't let the water take you. He reached for her hand. It was birdlight. You won't beg again, he said quietly. Not on my watch. She closed her eyes. Safe, she whispered, as if testing the word. By dawn, Juliana arrived. Maxwell's wife, calm, poised, and armed with a shawl. She stepped into the room, took one look at the woman in the bed, and softened. This is her. Yes. She walked over, brushed a damp curl from Amaka's forehead, and said gently, Welcome home, Mama. You're safe now. It wasn't performance. It was fact. Later that day, a convoy of black SUVs rolled into Maxwell's mansion. Security men saluted. The iron gates opened. Amaka, now in clean clothes, sat quietly in the Bentley's back seat. She looked out the window like someone visiting a dream. This is your house? She asked. Maxwell shook his head. It's your home now. She didn't answer. Her eyes did. They welled up. Inside the mansion, marble floors, chandeliers, silence you could hear. Servants lined up like royalty had arrived. At the top of the stairs, a little girl with bouncing braids peeked down. Daddy. Amara, age 6, came running, teddy bear in hand. Maxwell scooped her up. I want you to meet someone very special. The girl looked at Amaka. She saved me when I was your age, Maxwell said. Without her, I wouldn't be here. Amara stared, then said, Grandma. The word landed like grace. Amaka touched her chest. Grandma, she repeated, tasting it. From today, you're my grandma, Amara declared. No one corrected her. No one needed to. The days that followed weren't miraculous. They were human. And that made them more precious. Amaka was given a room with a view of the garden. Fresh clothes. Good food. Nurses checked her daily. Her appetite returned slowly, like a shy guest. Her voice, too. Mostly in the garden, telling stories under the mango tree. Folktales. Proverbs. Life disguised as fiction. Amara was her audience of one. Tell me again, Grandma, she would say. The one with the tortoise and the greedy chief. And Amaka would smile, lean back, and begin. Juliana often watched from the balcony. Maxwell, from his study. Feels like a missing piece of our family just walked back in. Juliana said one evening. Maxwell nodded. Because she did. But even joy has shadows. One night, Juliana overheard Amaka praying. God, why Jerry and Jacob? Why leave me to beg? If this is my second chance, don't take it too soon. Grief, it seemed, had its own room in the mansion. 2 weeks later, Maxwell hosted a dinner for his board, polished executives with Rolexes and rhetoric. The room was full of laughter and wine, until a tapping sound interrupted. Amaka had entered, slowly, in a simple wrapper and scarf. Her walking stick announced every step. The room hushed. One executive leaned in. Who is that? Maxwell stood. This is Madame Amaka. She saved my life as a child. Without her, I wouldn't be standing here. Show her respect. And they did. One by one they stood, not out of obligation, but reverence. Amaka nodded politely. Her eyes found Maxwell's. She gave him a small smile, the kind that says I see you. The kind only a mother gives a grown man. But Maxwell noticed her hand again. It was shaking, same as the day in the ring. And just like that, the old fear returned. The mansion had changed since Amaka arrived. Not in structure. The marbles still gleamed, the staff still moved with silent efficiency, and the garden still looked like it had been manicured by angels with horticultural degrees. No, what changed was tone. The air was warmer, softer, as if the walls had exhaled. Amaka was no longer a guest. She was gravity. Amara followed her everywhere, a 6-year-old shadow with too many questions and endless affection. They would sit beneath the mango tree as Amaka told stories in the oldest language. Metaphor, rhythm, wisdom wrapped in parable. In those moments, time softened. The past didn't sting as much. The future didn't seem so threatening. But Maxwell noticed the signs. It began with the teacup. One morning, Amaka's hand shook mid-pour, and the porcelain shattered on the marble. She flinched, not from injury, but shame. Juliana rushed in. Mama, are you all right? Amaka smiled. Too fast. Just old bones, my daughter. Juliana didn't argue. She called Maxwell. That evening, Dr. Hassan arrived. He did the usual, blood pressure, reflexes, pulse, then stepped into the hallway with Maxwell and Juliana. She's stable, he said. But aging isn't polite. Her body's tired. Malnutrition, years of exposure, they've taken their toll. She has strength of spirit, yes. But the flesh is counting days. Maxwell asked the question no one wants to ask. How many days? The doctor hesitated. Months. Maybe more, maybe less. But weakness will come in waves. And one of them. He didn't finish. Juliana wiped her eyes. Maxwell clenched his jaw. That night, Maxwell walked the garden like a man avoiding his own house. He paused under the mango tree where Amaka once called him a stubborn boy. The bench was empty. The silence loud. He looked up. The sky offered no answers. Why now? He asked no one. The woman who saved his life had just started living hers. And now death had RSVP'd without permission. Behind him, a voice. Maxwell. He turned. She stood wrapped in a shawl. You should be resting, he said, moving toward her. I'll rest when it's time. Tonight, I wanted to see the stars. They sat on the bench. No stories. Just breath. Don't cry for me, she said. Life gave me sorrow, yes. But it also gave me you. At the end, that is no small joy. He looked down. It's not enough. I owe you more than this. She reached for his hand. Her grip was weak but certain. Maxwell, every smile of your daughter, every kindness of your wife, every time you call me mama, that's repayment. He tried to hold it in. Failed. I just want more time. Her eyes didn't flinch. Time isn't ours. Love is. The next morning, Amara burst into her grandmother's room, teddy bear in hand. Grandma, wake up. Let's finish the tortoise story. But Amaka didn't move at first. Her breath was shallow, her skin pale. Amara ran, crying for Juliana. Maxwell arrived seconds later. She opened her eyes weakly. Don't cry, my baby, she whispered to Amara. Grandma is just resting her bones. Maxwell lifted her gently. Get the car. Outside, the rain returned, not as punishment, but as repetition. As they drove to the hospital, he held her hand, the same way she once held his. Stay with me, Mama, he whispered. Don't leave me again. But something in him already knew. This was a chapter closing. At the hospital, the air smelled like bleach and anxiety. Juliana sat with Amara. Maxwell paced. Hours passed before Dr. Hassan emerged. She made it through the night, he said. But Maxwell, if there's anything left unsaid, say it now. He didn't wait. He went in. Amaka lay in white sheets, her body barely registering against them. He took her hand. Mama. She opened her eyes. Barely. Maxwell, don't cry. You gave me life. And now you've given me mine. I came to your house as a nanny. I leave as a mother. A grandmother. Loved. That is more than I ever prayed for. He bowed his head, forehead to her hand. I'm not ready. No one is. She looked to the door. Bring Amara. Juliana walked in with the child. Amara climbed onto the bed carefully, teddy bear in tow. Grandma, you promised to hold my baby one day. Tears welled in Amaka's eyes. She stroked the girl's cheek. I will, my darling. From heaven. No, Amara sobbed. I want you here. Juliana wrapped her in an embrace. Maxwell looked away, his shoulders shaking. Amaka's breathing slowed. Her eyes found Maxwell again. Remember, love above all. Her fingers tightened once, then relaxed. The monitor beeped once, then held. A flat line. Nurses moved fast. Paddles. Shock. No response. Time of death, for 12 a.m. The woman who saved a drowning boy was gone. The funeral was mercifully brief. Lago's son showed no sympathy for mourning clothes. Under a white canopy at the edge of a quiet cemetery, the crowd had gathered, tight-lipped relatives, quiet staff members, a handful of boardroom friends whose eyes betrayed the discomfort of confronting mortality outside spreadsheets. Maxwell stood in black agbada, motionless, except for the steady rise and fall of his chest. Next to him, Juliana, composed, as always, and Amara, her tiny fingers entwined with his. The coffin was lowered with a kind of finality that mocked faith. Amara broke. Grandma, don't go. Maxwell lifted her, cradled her against his chest, and stepped forward. He took a handful of soil, released it slowly into the grave. Rest, Mama. You'll never be forgotten. The soil hit with like muted thunder. In the days that followed, the mansion changed again, not in furniture, but in frequency. Her laughter no longer echoed in the garden. The chair under the mango tree remained untouched. Her room smelled faintly of lavender and loss. But she was everywhere. In the scarf folded neatly on her bed. In the teddy bear Amara clutched at night. In the silence before dinner, when someone would instinctively wait for a story that didn't come. Grief, Maxwell realized, wasn't loud. It was slow and patient. One evening, as the sun melted behind the compound walls, Maxwell gathered the family in the living room. He held a framed photo. Madame Amaka, seated in the garden, headscarf neat, eyes bright, smiling as though she knew something the rest of the world was still learning. He placed the photo on the mantel. Then he spoke, not as a CEO, but as a son. This woman saved me from drowning. Twice. Once in a pool. Once in adulthood. He paused. She wasn't a nanny. She was my mother. In every way that matters. And because of her, I understand that love is not measured in bloodlines or titles, but in actions. Sacrifice. Presence. Juliana nodded quietly. Amara walked over and touched the photo. When I grow up, she said softly, I'll tell my babies about Grandma. I'll tell them she was brave. Maxwell looked at her. That's the best way to keep her alive. The weeks passed with predictable rhythm. Meetings resumed. The board reconvened. Maxwell moved on. But Maxwell didn't. Not completely. At night, He found himself returning to the garden bench, watching the stars, listening for echoes. And one evening, he made a decision. He called Juliana into the study. "I've been thinking," he began, "about legacy, about what matters." She listened, hands folded. "I want to do something in her name. Not charity, not a plaque. Something that works. Something living." Juliana tilted her head. "What do you have in mind?" He stood and paced. She was thrown away by the world. Because she got old. Because she got poor. Because she had no one to speak for her. He turned. "I want to build a home. For people like her. Elderly. Abandoned. Forgotten." Juliana's eyes softened. "Yes," she said. "Let's do it." It began quietly. A plot of land purchased on the outskirts of town. Architects brought in. A team assembled. No press releases. No grand announcements. They called it a Maka house, a sanctuary for elders with nowhere to go. Within 6 months, the gates opened. It wasn't luxurious, but it was dignified. Each resident had a private room, a garden, a library, a nurse who remembered their names, a counselor who listened without a clock. On the wall near the entrance, a single sentence carved in black granite. "Love above all." Maxwell visited weekly. He sat with old men who had once been engineers, grandmothers who had been seamstresses, teachers whose students never came back. He didn't give speeches. He listened. He brought Amara, who sat at their feet, sketching portraits with colored pencils. "This is my grandma's house," she would say proudly. And no one argued. At the 1-year anniversary of Amaka House, the press caught on. A journalist asked Maxwell what inspired it. He answered plainly, "She pulled me out of water once. Now I'm trying to do the same, for others drowning in neglect." The quote went viral. Years passed, as they tend to. Maxwell's hair grayed at the temples. Juliana transitioned from elegance to wisdom. Amara grew. At 16, she launched a nonprofit of her own, free art therapy for children in trauma zones. In an interview, when asked why, she said, "Because Grandma taught me that love isn't just a feeling. It's an action." One day, long after the headlines faded and the world found new distractions, Maxwell walked into a Maka house alone. The staff greeted him with familiarity. He went straight to the garden, sat on the bench, and looked up. The tree above him had grown, taller, fuller. The air was thick with silence, the good kind. He took out a small box from his pocket. Inside, a medal, awarded by the Ministry of Welfare for outstanding contribution to the dignity of the aged. He smiled at it, then at the tree. "I hope you're watching," he said. And maybe, somewhere, she was. Amaka House didn't grow like a business. It grew like a tree, slowly, quietly, unconcerned with applause. Within 3 years, it expanded from 1 building to 3. Each wing bore the name of a virtue: dignity, memory, grace. They didn't house patients. They housed lives. People with names, stories, and stubborn preferences about breakfast. Maxwell visited often, not out of duty, out of need. He found peace among the forgotten. The ones who remembered colonial times, currency changes, war, peace, and the price of bread when it was still measured in kobo. They told him things textbooks never could. And in return, he offered something they had given up on long ago: being seen. Juliana joined him when she could. Sometimes she brought books. Sometimes she brought rice. Always, she brought warmth. Amara, now in her late teens, became something of a minor celebrity at the facility. She held storytelling sessions in the evenings. She drew portraits. She organized music nights. One resident, Mama Titi, called her the echo of Amaka. Amara didn't mind. In fact, she wore the title like armor. Outside the walls of Amaka House, the world spun as usual. Oil prices rose, fell, then rose again. Maxwell's business interests expanded: energy, tech, logistics. He had enough money to outlive his great-grandchildren's ambition, but it didn't excite him the way it once did. His board asked why he wasn't pursuing the government contract in Senegal. He shrugged. "I'm investing in something slower." They didn't ask again. Then, one summer afternoon, a letter arrived. Not an email. A letter. Handwritten. Wax-sealed. It was from a law firm in Enugu. A man claiming to be the son of Jacob, Amaka's younger son, recently discovered his father's old journal, hidden in a rusted box beneath floorboards. In it, Jacob wrote of guilt, of the accident that took his brother's life, and his own descent into alcoholism and obscurity. But the journal also contained something unexpected, a sketch of a house, notes about starting a home for the elderly, someday, when I make peace. Jacob never did, but his son, Chitty, had read the journal and wept. Then he found out about Amaka House. I think you gave my grandmother the peace my father could not, the letter said. I would like to visit. Not as a guest. As family. Maxwell read the letter twice. Then again. He replied the same day, you are welcome anytime. Come home. Chitty arrived a week later. He looked nothing like Jacob, but his voice, soft, measured, carried something ancestral. He was an architect, recently returned from South Africa. He walked through Amaka House with reverence, fingers brushing the walls like he was touching memory. At dinner, seated beside Maxwell and Juliana, he asked gently, do you ever feel like she still walks here? Maxwell smiled. No, I don't feel it. Chitty blinked. I know it. Together, they expanded the vision. Chitty proposed a new wing, not for the elderly, but for young caregivers, orphans, single mothers, teenagers pushed out of school. They need homes too, he said, and they can give care, if we trust them. Juliana agreed instantly. It's how Amaka would have wanted it. Give care. Get purpose. The wing was named The Bridge, a nod to where the story began. When it opened, Amara gave the keynote speech. She stood before a modest crowd, staff, donors, residents, and held nothing back. My grandmother was found under a bridge. Today, this building stands as one. Between generations. Between despair and healing. Between memory and future. She paused. And this is just the beginning. Years passed. Again, Amara turned 25. She published her first book, Tales Under the Mango Tree, a collection of retold African folktales woven with her grandmother's life. The book went viral across the continent. Schools adopted it. NGOs ordered copies in bulk. She received speaking invitations from Nairobi, Accra, and Cape Town. Maxwell watched all this with the quiet pride of a man who knew better than to interfere with momentum. Then came the diagnosis. Maxwell, now in his early 60s, went in for a routine checkup and came out with a shadow on the scan. Nothing terminal, but serious enough to warrant lifestyle changes, surgery, and the kind of reflection that usually shows up far too late. Juliana took it better than he did. She reorganized the kitchen, adjusted their schedule, fired 2 doctors, and hired one. Amara cried. In private. Then flew back from Johannesburg the next day. I'll be here, she said. Whatever you need. Maxwell shook his head. No. Live your life. Don't orbit mine. But she didn't listen. She never had. During recovery, he insisted on walking the grounds of Amaka House. Slow steps. Steady. He greeted the residents like old friends. Some remembered him. Some didn't. It didn't matter. One morning, he stopped under the mango tree. It was taller now. Its roots deeper. Its shade wider. He sat on the bench where Amaka once sat with Amara in her lap. A nurse approached. Olga Maxwell, are you all right? He nodded. I'm home. That evening, he asked Juliana to join him on the rooftop terrace. They watched the sun dip behind the city's slow chaos. I've been thinking, he said. Juliana raised an eyebrow. That's usually dangerous. He chuckled. I want to step back. From business. From the board. Maybe even the country. She didn't answer immediately. Then, where do you want to go? He looked out at the horizon. Nowhere. I just want to be still. For once. A year later, Amara stood beside her parents at a small ceremony hosted at the presidential villa. Maxwell George was being awarded the National Medal of Civic Legacy, a rarely given honor for contributions to social development. He accepted it with a short speech. I was once saved by a woman the world considered disposable. Everything good I have built began with that moment. This medal belongs to her. He held it up. The audience stood. Back at home, that night, he placed the medal beside Amaka's photo. Still saving me, he murmured. Juliana kissed his cheek. Amara wrapped her arms around both. And for the first time in a long time, there was nothing left to prove. There's a certain peace that comes not with achievement, but with acceptance. Maxwell George had chased the former most of his life. It took him 6 decades, a drowning, a rescue, and a second rescue years later to understand the value of the latter. Now, in his 70s, peace sat beside him like an old friend. He no longer ran companies. Others did. His name remained on building facades, shareholder reports, and oil tankers, but he hadn't checked the markets in over a year. Legacy, he realized, was not what you build with concrete, but what survives in absence. And so, most mornings, he sat on the same bench beneath the mango tree at Amaka House, a place that had long since outgrown him. It now operated in 4 Nigerian states, and talks were underway for its expansion into Ghana and Kenya. But the original home, the first seed, still bore her scent. Juliana had aged into elegance. Her hair silvered, her steps slower, but her presence, unmistakable. She still managed household affairs with the precision of a Swiss train schedule. When she spoke, people listened. And when she didn't, they listened harder. She visited Amaka House less frequently now. Knees complained, eyesight dimmed. But when she came, residents straightened up. Her arrival still carried weight. Amara, now a woman in her 30s, had become something of a continental figure. Her books, now 3 in total, had become standard reading in primary schools across West Africa. She had also launched a foundation of her own, inspired by her grandmother's resilience, focusing on memory preservation for the elderly. "We forget our elders too fast," she often said. "And when we do, we forget ourselves." She married a quiet doctor named Tund, a man who understood silence and smiled with his eyes. Together they had a daughter, Amaka Jr., who quickly became the unofficial mascot of the original Amaka House. The residents doted on her. She responded with crayon portraits and half-eaten biscuits. One evening, as twilight bruised the sky, Maxwell sat on the bench with his granddaughter curled up beside him. She was 6, the same age Amara had been when she called Amaka grandma for the first time. "Tell me a story, Grandpa." Maxwell smiled. "A true one, or the kind where animals talk?" "The kind where people do." He nodded. "There was once a boy who jumped into a pool, thinking he was brave. He wasn't. But a woman jumped in after him. She saved him. Then life took them apart. And one day, when the boy became a man, he saw her again, hungry, alone, forgotten by the world. He brought her home, and she saved him again." The little girl blinked. Why did she save him twice? Because love doesn't stop when it's inconvenient. She leaned against his side. "That's a good story." Maxwell looked out at the horizon. "It's a better life." Years passed. The mango tree became a landmark, referenced in travel blogs, sketched by architecture students, included in city maps as site of legacy. No one chopped it. No one dared. Maxwell's health, as expected, declined. Nothing dramatic. Just the slow surrender of a body that had done enough. Eventually, the walk stopped. Then the visits. Then even the garden became a memory. He stayed in the house more. Sat in a sunlit room filled with old books, framed photos, and silence. He didn't mind. Silence had never betrayed him. On his 85th birthday, Amara organized a quiet gathering. No press, just family and close staff. He insisted on no speeches. But during the toast, he stood anyway. "My name is Maxwell George," he said. "Once I was saved. Then I built. Now I watch." He raised his glass. "To those who lift others when no one's watching." No one clapped. They simply stood. The end came on a Tuesday. Rain tapped gently on the windows. A respectful rhythm, not unlike the one that had introduced Madame Amaka decades earlier. Juliana was by his side. She held his hand without speaking. He looked at her, then out the window. "Still raining," he said. She smiled. "Still saving." His breath slowed. His grip softened. Then he was gone. The funeral was modest, at his request. No televised service. No government convoy. Just the people who knew him before the world did, and after it stopped mattering. They buried him near the mango tree, beside a simple stone that already bore Amaka's name. Now it bore his too. Maxwell George. Son. Husband. Father. Found. Amara took over as chair of Amaka House. She expanded its reach, deepened its programs, and ensured every new resident knew the story. Not because it made good marketing, but because it made sense of everything. Tund remained her anchor. Their daughter, now 10, once stood under the mango tree and said, "This place smells like books and memories." No one corrected her, because she was right. One evening, decades later, Amaka Jr. sat in a chair at the front of a university auditorium. She was giving a lecture on intergenerational healing and memory work. A student asked, "How did you become the person you are?" She paused. "My great-grandmother saved a boy from drowning. My grandfather brought her back from disappearance. my mother told the world. And now, I try to keep the echo alive. She smiled. Sometimes, legacy isn't a thing we leave. It's the person we become. Back at the original Amaka house, under the still-standing mango tree, a stone bench sits quietly, etched into its backrest. She saved me once. I never stopped being grateful. And in that quiet place, where storms once howled and silence once wept, the wind carries a whisper. Still saving.